Hello and welcome to Dojo Live this Thursday, September 26th, 2024. My name is Kim Landis and it's my pleasure to be hosting another great show for you today. Joining me as co-host is Sridhar Padmanabhan.
Hey, Kim.
Good to see you, Sridhar. It's been a while.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's going to be a great conversation as we speak with Rod Jimenez, who is the CEO of SHR. Thank you so much for joining us today, Rod.
Thanks, Kim. Hi, Sridhar.
Hey,
Yes,
Rod.
it's going to be a really great conversation because we're talking about tech-driven hospitality and unlocking guest personalization in the digital era. A really big word there in this space, personalization. And we're going to be talking about everything from AI-powered booking engines to data-driven insights. How is innovation reshaping the way hotels connect and cater to guests in the digital age? So before, however, we jump into the digital age and personalization and what all that means, Rod, we'd like to get to know your story a bit. If you could sort of lead up to your passion for the industry and what's led up to your time with SHR. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. I appreciate the invite. Like many other people in the industry, I came into it sort of from a kind of an unexpected path. And then you get here and you never leave. And so my path was through my involvement with an early stage company back when the web was becoming mainstream. And so that company was called Webvertising. And so it was in the business of helping people have a presence on the web. And one thing led to another. We started doing business with hotels. And then also then at the same time, we were evolving more into application development. So those two things, the fact that we were evolving towards application development and our early introduction to players in the hotel industry led to our becoming more and more interested in the industry. And then we started developing applications for the industry and working very closely with hoteliers. That led to the development of iHotelier, which is a central reservation system. I love to, when I tell this story, I tell people that we didn't know we were developing a central reservation system. Somebody after a demo told us one day, well, what you have is called a central reservation system in our industry. And so that's how, new to the industry we were. But, over the years, obviously working with so many great clients and in learning more and more, that application continued to grow. It ended up being sold to TravelClick back in 2004. So we all went to work for TravelClick for a while, then came out, started another company called Whiteboard Labs. And then a few years later, we started developing another central reservation system from scratch, which is the one that SHR today has in the market. And so we ended up adopting the SHR name after a partnership with a company out of Singapore that owned a company in Denver that was in the revenue management and reselling CRS to hotels. And that company was called Scepter Inc. And so then after we did our transaction with that entity, then we became Scepter Hospitality Resources. And then we started referring to the company and changed our logo and our domain name and all that to make it a little easier. And we just started calling ourselves SHR. And so that started sort of the final stage that led up to now. And that was about 2012. In the meantime, we continued to grow. We raised some external capital from Serent Capital, which was a great partner. And then most recently, we ended up selling to a very large company out of the UK called the Axis Group. So that's why That's why you see now that SHR and in the logo it says an Access Group company. But that's kind of the long
Yeah.
and through that process, starting in about 2018, we started growing beyond CRS and adding CRM and RMS to our suite of products.
Wow, congratulations. I mean, that's quite the journey, quite the growth. And that's absolutely amazing. I was going to actually ask you now, beyond what it is that you're doing. I know that you're in a lot of different industries, casinos and elsewhere, and it's really, really amazing. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes. So let's talk about this digital era. I mean, you, Rod, have been involved since the onset, it seems, and coming into the industry to bring technology into the space. You know, it's revolutionized so many industries, hospitality, of course, being no exception. I'm curious from your perspective, what does guest personalization even mean in this kind of new digital era, this new landscape? And why is that such a critical factor for hotels to be successful today?
Yeah, it's interesting. You're right. We've seen a few waves that are similar to the current one in terms of how excited we all get and how much of a huge
AI,
Gen AI, right? Even the web, right? When we thought, oh, and to be fair, I mean, the web really transformed how we buy travel and how we research experiences and all that. So I think at this point, the reason why personalization is so important for hotels is because we now have a generation of guests that are coming into the hotel that are digital natives, right? And so it's a tricky balance for hotels, and we can talk a little more about this later, but it's a tricky balance for hotels to achieve that expectation of, I want to be interacting with you wherever I am. And if I'm on my mobile phone most of the time, then I want to be there. Or if it's on the desktop, and I want that to transition, seamlessly. And I want to not interact with somebody when I check in, but you still have guests that prefer to interact with somebody. So there's a balance to be gained there. But the personalization piece is important because the expectations, I think, have been raised, and we have a guest now that doesn't want to be asked at the front desk when they check in if they've stayed at the hotel before, when they've stayed 10 times over the last 12 months, right?
True.
And they also want to not waste a lot of time when they're researching. So the more we can facilitate that research process with maybe utilizing data that we have on that particular guest or on that persona that we can form because of their activities and how they're interacting with let's say with the booking engine, for example, and we can present things that are more that are closely aligned with who they are and the type of travel that they're doing, then we're going to have a more satisfied guest. And at the end of the day, that's, in our world, the reminder that we issue to ourselves and to all of our clients all the time, that it has to always be about the guest, right? And so there is a balance to be had there. There's a danger of saying, oh, everything has to be personalization, and I'm going to guess and personalize this experience and present all of these things because of what I think the guest is going to want, versus, look, I have some information, I know their patterns, and I can identify what persona that guest is wearing at that point, because we may be traveling on business, we may be traveling as a family, and that changes things.
Definitely.
So the more that we're able to be smart with that data and with those predictions, and then guide the process, the more satisfied the guest will be. I'll give you a super quick example.
Yeah.
So it's so simple. Like we make a reservation at a hotel, we go back to the website, and then what do we see? We see the exact same thing that I would get if I hadn't booked anything. But if we're personalizing experiences, then that interaction with the website after I have booked something could say, welcome back. Do you want to improve your stay or add to your stay? Do you want to enhance your booking with activities or something else? Or do you want to modify your reservation for whatever reason? And so we should be welcoming somebody back and not just saying book now,
Yeah.
And we see that repeated across e-commerce, right? Like we buy something and then for the next 3 months we get offered the same thing, and we
Yes.
going, wait a minute, I just bought it already, I don't need any more, right?
But I think there is at least a step ahead in the e-commerce, because a lot of it's like, hey, because you purchased this, a lot of people who purchased this thing also enjoyed this thing. So I think there is an increase in that personalization space on the e-commerce side that we can still.
Yeah, and that whole idea of recommendation engines it's very applicable to the hotel paradigm, and it's very helpful.
Absolutely.
So yeah, but
yesterday's conversation on Dojo Live with Assert AI, Shalab, he said something about it's not AI against humans, it's humans against humans using AI.
Yeah. I've heard it say that you're not losing your job to AI. You're losing your job to somebody that is smart about using AI.
Yeah. And so let's talk about this idea of these AI-powered booking engines. I know you're kind of sweet spot in this becoming increasingly important. How are you seeing artificial intelligence reshaping kind of this guest experience? We talked about maybe the website changing when you come in, recommendation engines, but what does this look like from the moment sort of the guest searches for that hotel to even all the way through their post stay?
Yeah, it's interesting that I think recommendation engines, it's a very natural thing. It's a big thing. It's something that can be tested and you can measure the impact of what you're recommending and the uptake and all of that. There is one interesting aspect of AI in hotels, and it's that, and we're certainly very much trying to work on how to enhance the interaction, the interaction with the guest, let's say at the booking engine level. But at the same time, we're spending a lot of time and effort improving or using AI to improve the behind the scenes live for the hotelier. What that means is that we're deploying tools inside of the CRS, for example, that makes it a lot more efficient for a hotel to craft their descriptions to match the specific requirements of a particular channel, for example, the GDS. And the more we get into language and descriptors and things like that within a character limitation, it's very time consuming, right? And so AI can be very useful by saying, look, take this information and create a room description that is geared towards a business traveler, and let AI help us with that. Then things like something that we call a retention engine, where we're looking at all of the reservations that are on the books at a hotel and trying to assess the propensity to cancel, right? And then flagging those for the hotel to then perhaps do something in reaching out to that guest and reducing the risk of cancellation. those are things that are typically not, super talked about, but at the same time, they they give the hotel the ability to create efficiencies, better revenue streams, and ultimately, because it frees the hotelier up to be in the hospitality business, then it leads to happier guests, which is what we were talking about earlier. That ultimately, that's the ultimate measure, right? Are you providing hospitality for the folks that come into your hotel, and are they leaving happy? And then endorsing you and creating that flywheel of more guests coming into the hotel, more revenue, and then enabling the stays and the folks that are interacting with those hotels to be top notch.
Absolutely. And the repeat stays, like a loyalty
Yeah.
piece. Like, how cool is it if, like, this, whatever that flag is of propensity for cancellation, and even something as simple as an alert that says, looking forward to your stay on next Thursday, enjoy a complimentary glass of wine at the bar, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, exactly. And it all goes to this whole idea that we are working on a lot these days, which is the whole fragmented tech stack at hotels. We developed a new mission to attack that. The way we talk about that is that when you have a lot of fragmented pieces in your technology stack, is like a Jenga tower. And every time you add a new component, you add more complexity to that, and you also add more risk. And so if we can get to a place where we have a less fragmented tech stack, this example you just mentioned of, you've got AI telling you that, taking everything into account and doing all the calculations, I'm going to flag this particular reservation as one that has high propensity to cancel. And oh, by the way, it's high value. Then you can, in a more integrated stack, you can now automatically create or trigger a flow that runs automatically, that then triggers the CRM to send an offer to get that guest more interested and more excited about coming in and staying at the hotel. And perhaps, if it's a cocktail at arrival, but it saved a $4,000 reservation from canceling, that's a huge ROI, right? Or if you're interacting with the RMS and you know that you have the ability to provide a free upgrade or a very compelling, economically, compelling offer of an upgrade, because we know that it's a guest that typically spends more inside of the hotel or travels with the family, and therefore is going to value that upgrade much more. That interoperability between the systems is something that we're really paying a lot of attention to, and where it's not necessarily that you're finding one piece of the puzzle that's AI transforming everything, but it's AI sprinkled across all of that to then enable better hospitality at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Shradar, like, what would you like to ask Rod? What are you hearing through this conversation?
So many questions, Rod, right? I think, first of all, I was, looking at the company's website earlier, and, believe it or not, I met with and worked with Bob Post when he was CEO at TravelClick and things like that all those years ago.
Yeah.
So that's like literally going back 20 years ago today and things like that, right? So I was sad to know he, after he came to Noland, I was sad to know he had passed on. So I just want to share with you that, that we probably know a lot of the same people. As as you were talking about this, I was thinking about, you have these large brand hotels who have a lot of the same tech stack components, right? For the same functionality,
Mm-hmm.
whether themselves or with Oracle Hospitality, you have a CRS, you have property management system, you have customer, so on and so forth, right? At the same time, your own space is also pretty crowded, right? I mean, there are many of companies which are coming up, recommendation engines, revenue management, booking engines, and how to trigger the offer, CRM, and so on, right? So as you have big brands, and then you have smaller brands, independent hotels, or even as I can see the casino industry, where do you see the uptake first in this transformation? Do you think the big brands will transform first? Some other entities will transform first? Who will, or who do you think, in your view, is getting there a little bit faster? So, long question, but you must be
Yeah,
thinking this.
that is, I mean, that is a super interesting question, because we see, and I usually get in debates about this, because we love to beat up the hospitality industry, because the hospitality industry is always so late and not innovative and all of that. The reality is, I think that there is a lot more innovation and a lot more embracing of technology than we give credit to
Right.
in terms of the industry. We have a lot of companies in the industry that are very innovative, that are willing to take risks, that are willing to push the envelope and try new things. And again, that sometimes gets lost in that loud message that, oh, we're always behind, the hospitality industry is always late. And so part of the reason for that lateness sometimes is that sort of spaghetti bowl of connections, and that Jenga tower that I talked about. It's hard to unravel once you're in that. And so that's sometimes, even when companies want to change, that's a big blocker that they need to figure out, and sometimes sort of take one layer at a time. But we see so we see, to address your question directly, I think that the big chains are sort of their main mandate now, right? Post the whole asset light transformation and all of that. Their main mandate now is one of innovation, and it's their loyalty programs, and is their technology stack. And so we see a lot going there. We don't necessarily participate in that market a lot. We tend to be at the next level, in the regional chain
Right.
level. And at the regional chain level, we do see a lot of courage in terms of changing things, and taking bold moves in terms of unplugging things and plugging new things. We have a client that during COVID said, you know what, it's challenging times, but we're never going to have this opportunity, hopefully ever, of having empty hotels and idle software applications. So they went to a process where they changed PMS, they changed CRS, they changed RMS and CRM, all in one process, right? And so that takes a lot of courage, and they continue to do things to try to improve how they gather data, how they can learn from that data, how they can make the insights about that data available to everybody on the team. So we see a lot of change there, right? There are some industries, like the casino side of things, where we're starting to see a lot of momentum building towards
Right.
taking those risks and making those moves. The reality, as you probably know well in that industry, is that that's one industry where there are a lot of pieces to the puzzle, right?
Right.
And there's such big operations that anything you move can have ripple effects way down the organization. So they have to be, I don't blame him for being cautious, but we're starting to see a lot of momentum building there. So and then at the end of that, or the next segment of the industry with the independent hotels, and let's say single unit operations, the beauty of those cases is that it's a lot easier to take risk, right? I mean, when you think about changing a CRS, yeah, there is some retraining, there's some risk, but it's not a heavy lift as or as heavy a lift as when you have 100 hotels, 150 hotels in a portfolio, right? And so interestingly enough, that's where the uptick in adopting innovation and getting to a less fragmented stack should be moving the fastest, but sometimes it gets it gets countered by the resource limitation, right? And so but I guess the short answer to your question is we're seeing it all across the spectrum,
right?
Kind of with different velocity. But we do think that hoteliers, and it's interesting that COVID really became a catalyst and kind of a wake-up call to hoteliers that said, technology is your friend. When these things happen, when things get competitive, when things get more challenging, the better positioned you are with your technology stack, the better you're able to, weather the different storms that are coming. And so knowing your guest, having a user interface that makes sense for a guest, that works on whatever device the guest is interacting with, that covers all the channels where that guest can find you. Those things were huge reminders during COVID and post-COVID. I think that hoteliers came out of that period saying, okay, we need to embrace this. And I think that has been a little bit of the catalyst for that momentum that we're seeing in the change that we're seeing in the industry.
Absolutely. I'm curious because I know that this was really important for you as we were preparing for today's show, and I think it even aligns with perhaps the size of the hotels, if they're the individual properties or the portfolios, and that comes to, do you see a difference in terms of that balance, striking that balance between digital tools and automation while still maintaining the human touch, right? So we talked about this a bit earlier, a new generation of guests, but all guests, I think, expect the human touch. Who's kind of striking that balance better, or is that also something that you're seeing that everyone's capable of doing?
I think everybody can do it, right? I think that it's important to, as a hotelier, to keep in mind what business you're in, right? There's a book that has garnered a lot of attention in the hospitality industry. It's mainly about the restaurant side of the hospitality business, called Unreasonable Hospitality. And so it's all about the fact that ultimately it's creating memorable experiences. It's that human side of hospitality that it's not easy to replace with any kind of technology, right? We can delight people with the intuitiveness of a user interface. They can end a reservation process and say, wow, that was pretty cool, and that was very intuitive, and it was easy. I didn't complain about the user interface at all. But I don't know if that's going to be the the thing that your guest is going to talk about to their friends. Instead, I think it's going to be the human touch and the smiles and the opportunity detection in terms of finding out that a family's having a special celebration and then delighting them with a surprise because you've got some anniversary amenity that it's in their room when they show up, and those are the things, or correcting a wrong in a very definite and delightful way. Those are the things that I think guests leave the hotel and talk about it online and with their friends and all of that, and that generates new traffic. So the key is, in our minds, is that where we see our role in that is that is a very human activity. It's irreplaceable, right? But our role in it is to have technology that simplifies the lives of hoteliers, that simplifies that very complex and fragmented tech stack, so that they can be much more efficient. Maybe they can do more with less behind the scenes and deploy more resources to that irreplaceable piece of the hospitality experience that it's provided by a human that can detect sadness, that can detect happiness, that can detect frustration and then act on that. So that's in our minds, that's how we see the role of technology in an industry like the hospitality industry.
Beautiful. As we do look forward to the future of hospitality, what role do you see SHR playing in continuing to driving this kind of innovation, trends, advancements that you're excited about for the next few years? And then, of course, if somebody would like to talk to you about it, how might they get a hold of you directly, Rod?
Yeah, so I think we're starting, or we're just at the beginning of a very exciting period, right? Because we're seeing hospitality, as we just talked about, willing to innovate, willing to embrace new ways of doing things, and we're seeing the technology that is allowing that with process automation and sort of like the heavier parts of AI that are much more complex in terms of the outcomes and the value of those outcomes. And so we see what's coming in the context of that defragmentization of the technology stack, continuing to evolve so that we can have more and more pieces of the commercial activity of the hotel be much better connected, and then yielding outcomes that are impossible to achieve with a fragmented stack. And as part of the Access group now, we are now seeing the ability to bring other pieces that perhaps we would have seen as too ancillary for us to really devote the resources to that, but that are nonetheless, very value adding. So with Access, for example, we've got a big restaurant division, and we've got we focus a lot on the commercial side of things. That they also have solutions that are on the operational side of the house, including human resources and all of that. So I think that as the years go on, in the next 2 to 3 years, we've got a lot of pieces to try to integrate into this mission to reduce the fragmentation of the technology stack in the industry. So I see the next 2 to 5 years as very exciting times in the hospitality industry.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much, Rod, for your time today, for sharing the SHR Access Group story with us, and of course, what it means for personalization in the digital age and what hoteliers and their technology partners can do about it. So, yes, thank you so much, and wishing you and your team nothing but success over these next few years.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate the opportunity. And
Good to meet you, Rod. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Good seeing you.
All right. Our pleasure. Stick around for just a minute as we go off air. But before we do, I'd like to remind our viewers that we've got another full house, fully booked next week on Dojo Live. We've got one show on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We're going to be kicking it off with Hotel Concierge. We're going to be talking with Fresh Air Sensor as well as Groups 360. So join us Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific. Until then, stay safe, everyone, and bye for now.